Welcome to the Power Foods Lifestyle Podcast. I'm your host, Kristy Jo, mind and body strategist and fitness nutrition specialist. You're listening to episode 228, Graduated Carbs and the Phase 3 Lifestyle. I hope you've already subscribed to the Power Foods Lifestyle blog over at, you guessed it, powerfoodslifestyleblog.com. That's where I'm not only putting the written version of each podcast, but I'm making additional posts with PFL recipes that you can enjoy on your own or with your family. Now, real quick, before we get into today's topic, I want to tell you about the benefits of becoming a PFL supporter on Patreon. When you become a gold or platinum champion with your monthly donation, you will earn access to the PFL digital recipes, PDFs, handouts, and other programs I've created just for you. And when you become just a platinum supporter of the Power Foods Lifestyle, you get all of that plus a one-on-one coaching call with me each month. Click on the link in the show notes or go straight to patreon.com and type in Power Foods Lifestyle to become a supporter today. With your very small monthly donation, you help support this show, the hosting of it, and the continuation of it as I work to get my passion out to you each week. With that said, I'll bet you noticed there's been about a month since my last episode. So for those of you loyal listeners who are so wonderful to have actually reached out, messaging me on Instagram or Facebook or emailing me and saying, is everything okay with you and the baby? Just want to assure everyone, yes, everything is perfectly fine. I'll give you just a quick synopsis of where we're at. So I am currently at 35 weeks and a few days into my pregnancy, and baby is still breech, so I'm doing some exercises and a lot of self-talk to try to get her to turn head down. We have an ultrasound next week where we'll confirm where she's at positioning as well as see how big she's measuring. Consistently, she's been measuring about 3 weeks big this entire pregnancy. Now, I was a large baby at 10 pounds 1 ounce, and my husband was also a large baby at 9 pounds 1 ounce. So we were already expecting a pretty large baby, but I'm planning for, my hope, my dream is that I can deliver unmedicated naturally, but I have had to open my mind over the past few weeks to the possibility that it may not be my plan A, that there may be surgery, but definitely moving full steam ahead, full focus on what my ideal plan looks like, but I'm opening up my mind to the possibility that we may need to do something else. So however she gets here, and however we can both be healthy and happy, that will be ideal. We have had some travels. We went on a big road trip to see a lot of family. I am traveling back and forth between my hometown where I'm going to birth the baby and Salt Lake City where I live. Now that we're in weekly appointments, we've had a lot of appointments, starting all my natural childbirth classes and just dealing with a much lowered bandwidth. So yes, everything is fine, but to those of you who are loyal listeners, just kind of want to give an explanation of why I have been absent. I know many of you may be following my Instagram account where I'm documenting the pregnancy, which is at Power Foods Pregnancy. So you're probably a little bit more aware, but it's been amazing because I've kept up with my clientele. So that's been my number one priority, is to make sure they receive the bulk of my energy each day and just making sure I do everything. And then unfortunately, just the past month, the podcast has not got that full attention, but I am going to be doing my best to bring you a weekly show. As mentioned before, those monthly donations do help to raise it on the priority list. So thank you to those of you who have considered that. Let's go ahead and move into today's discussion, which is phase 3 of my keto challenges. And if you know phase 3, you will know that phase 3 is not keto at all, that it's moving us out of keto. I hope that you have already listened to and applied the principles that I've taught in the phase 1 and phase 2 episodes, which are directly preceding this podcast episode. This really was designed for you to listen to all 4, as it's literally giving you the program, the method, the principles to work on healing your body, work on healing your gut from the inside out. This is a process that is superb. No matter what the condition is, no matter what the symptoms are, that this process can usually do a great deal of good for any individual. Of course, please always get your doctor's approval and, explain the principles and so forth. And I'd be happy to coach you through it if you are in need of that. So reach out to me if needs be at powerfoodslifestyle@gmail.com. I want to share with you the items in phase 3 that are going to be different than perhaps in phase 1 or phase 2. So really quickly, in phase 2, we began to introduce the possibility of introducing dairy. Phase 3, that continues, that you may play around with and pay attention to how your body responds. The same goes for gluten. As we are introducing carbohydrates, I'd prefer you start falling in love with non-gluten carbs simply for the reason that those are wonderful carbohydrates that we often forget about unless we're intentionally bringing them in. Those include things like our sweet potatoes, our red potatoes, all types of beans. I just had lunch with garbanzo beans with some chickpeas and some kidney beans for the carbohydrate, mixed in with some chicken, a bunch of kale and other leafy greens for a PVC meal, and those were my carbs. None of those contain gluten. And so there are many wonderful options of carbohydrates that we just forget they're there. They're plant-based, and so I would just like to see us bring those in. In phase 3, we're going to lift the bar that we had in phase 1 and phase 2 of not having any indulgence meals. In phase 3, we're going to entertain the possibility of it. Now that, I'll talk a little bit more specifically about this in a moment, but I just want to give you an overview. It's going to depend on you and you assessing your own psychology. If you can start having an indulgence meal and not feeling shameful about it, not feeling too much stress, not feeling lack of control, and you're working to get our POcarbs in the majority of the time, then that may be a good time for you to start introducing more of the lifestyle technique, which is an occasional time of indulging and using those carbohydrates to eat and enjoy any great variety of foods. But if we're still working on the mindset around indulging, we're experiencing shame, fear, any feelings of misguidance, or an awareness about what we really should be doing, then perhaps let's finish phase 3 just focusing on POcarbs, and after phase 3, once we've got the technique of what a PVC meal, what a PVF meal is, interchanging those and bringing them in as needed, assessing where our energy is at versus need for a feeling of fullness, and using those PVC, PVF meals accordingly, then maybe that would be the time to start introducing indulgence meals. Every single person's going to be different. You may need an indulgence meal. You may desire an indulgence meal. On the other hand, you may not. You may learn to feel so good in your body that that desire for the white sugar, white flour, anything that's not like really power foodsy just kind of goes out the window because you don't like how you feel, you don't like the side effects of it. I think that variable can change either with age and just experience on earth and being in a body, or it can change based on the amount of time spent in the power foods lifestyle and strategic eating. And so just kind of keep that in mind, but I'll go into that more in detail soon. In phase 3, we lift the bar of needing to eat a little bit lower protein like we had in phase 1. In phase 2, we also raised the protein a bit, and phase 3, we raised that protein a bit too. So it's more of like eat moderate protein. I've never been a real big fan of the term high protein diet. Of course, everything needs to be explained in nuance, and one person's interpretation of high protein may not be another person's interpretation. So my interpretation here at Power Foods Lifestyle is that for females, anything above 150 grams of protein per day would be classified as high protein. And there's just a minor demographic of people that I would even want to see do that. And that would include power lifters, people that are extreme athletes, people who are eating a greater amount of calories so that it's not such a high percentage of their calories coming from protein, but that it's actually still a moderate percentage of their daily caloric intake coming from proteins, that there's still a great abundance, so not basically eating in a caloric deficit. Moderate protein to me is between 100 and 150 grams of protein per day for a female. I'll go ahead, and I know most of my listeners are females, but I know most of the females know males or are married to males. So I will throw this out for your information. A high protein diet to me for a male is going to be about 220 grams plus per day. Moderate for a male would be about 160 to 220, and low protein would be below 160. And so that's just kind of a good rule of thumb. In phase 3, we are also going to kind of pull away from using stevia and sugar alcohols. Those are tools for phase 1 and phase 2. In a lifestyle, in a continuous lifestyle, no, I'm not saying that I'm against you using those in a regular lifestyle. I certainly use stevia once in a blue moon in like a pumpkin steamer drink, or something that I'm doing right now. It's the fall, and okay, now I know you're curious how I make it. Really quick, I just heat up about 10 ounces of unsweetened almond milk, and then I do a small dash of pumpkin pie extract, and then about 2 little packets of stevia. And you can throw in some protein powder, but sometimes I just like that warm milk in the afternoon. Is very comforting to me. That's something I've always enjoyed in the fall, and so that would be a time that I use my stevia. I don't regularly use stevia in my yerba mate that I have, usually about once a day. And because I am eating carbs in my regular lifestyle personally right now, I don't have a need to replace any of those sugars. And so if I'm going to eat a sugar, it's going to be, more of a just it's in the food, it's coming naturally in the food. And so that's just something to keep in mind, is I don't want to see anyone really develop a lifestyle where those are of constant use. Every day you have to have those. Those are tools for us to keep blood sugar a little bit more stable when we're in a caloric deficit, but we need something sweet, etc. But in a lifestyle, we're trying to train ourselves how to use real food as fuel, getting in front of emotions and triggers, and kind of stepping outside of that roadway where we're acting like everybody else, where processed foods and high sugar foods, that those normal culture foods for everyone else are not our normal. Therefore, we don't need to seek to replace those. So that's what phase 3 is really about, is trying to embody that shift. In phase 3, we continue trying to eat a half cup of olives daily. We use our healthy oils. We are doing a 2-to-1 fats ratio. All of these are consistent with phase 1 and phase 2. We eat a serving of cruciferous vegetables daily. We're taking our magnesium daily. In phase 3, because you're introducing carbs again, you do not need to do potassium daily. If you notice yourself cramping, that's something, of course, you will need to play around with on your own. But for the most part, once we get our carbs up over 100 grams of carbs on the daily, most people find that they do not need to supplement with potassium. I still would like you to salt your foods with a sea salt or pink Himalayan salt. Take your omegas daily, your vitamin D3, and your B12. In phase 3, exogenous ketones don't become a necessity, kind of replacing and helping with energy. Though if you really do like the way they feel on your brain therapeutically for thinking, or perhaps you have noticed they help with your memory or with your workouts, then feel free to continue. There's no harm in continuing, but the great necessity of helping give your body energy in that conversion over to keto has been eliminated, because you're now in a carbohydrate eating state, so you don't need to be doing that. Of course, we'll stick to our principle of red meat, trying to eat it only 1 to 3 times per week. Don't stress if you have it 4 or 5 times a week, but let's just remember, on trying to develop a lifestyle, we're trying to develop habits and tendencies that keep our bodies in balance and give us the best possible chance of longevity and constant health and constant feelings of energy and well-being and just vitality. No need to count net carbs in phase 3. Still stick to the principle of weighing yourself only once a week. Low intensity exercise is always, a great thing, depending on your abilities, your age, your access, etc. But it's not such a priority in phase 3. I'd rather see you start getting into more of some high intensity interval training and some intervals, and start doing some weightlifting, and let's push the envelope getting into anaerobic style of exercising, where that heart rate is at that threshold where you're probably going to lose your breath. So that would be really good. Now in phase 3, experimenting with your carb timing. That's going to be a big priority here. Many of you may remember my first edition of the Power Foods Lifestyle that was published in 2013. Between 2013 and 2015, I really stuck to the principle that we should keep our carb meals, our PVC meals, before evening. Essentially, that we should get the bulk of our carbs in when we're most active, when our circadian rhythm is high, when cortisol is highest in the morning, etc. But I, since that time, had worked with so many people and experimented and really tried to customize to them, that by 2015, when I published edition 2 of my book, I opened that up and said PVC meals can go any time of day. You may, of course, experiment with your body and your psychology and how your body responds, and you may find that you would do better to keep your carb meals before evening, but I don't want you to be afraid. There should be zero fear that by eating a carbohydrate at night, when paired in the right portions with protein and vegetables, that it's going to do damage to you. Like it's everything comes with a bigger conversation. What was the daily caloric intake? What were the daily macro breakdowns? How often does this happen? Was this a psychological need? Was this a better response to an emotional trigger than otherwise could have been? There's many considerations to make when we look at that. And as you know, I don't just talk optimality of nutrition. It's a very empty and short road of conversation if that's all we do. We have to talk about the bigger emotions and thought patterns at play. So I would like you to experiment with your carb timing in phase 3. If you own the phase 3 meal plan, remember those recipes and those meals that are on the list, they are interchangeable. So feel free to exchange those. If you are new to the Power Foods lifestyle and you're just hearing all of these phase training protocols for the first time and you would like to purchase those plans, just reach out to me at powerfoodslifestyle@gmail.com and we can get those to you. Other elements of phase 3, we are trying to enjoy some fruit every day, maybe about half a cup or so. Not to say like it's terrible if you have more than that, but that's a pretty good baseline. And then we're introducing the non-strategic carb strategy if needed. I kind of went through that with indulgence meals. Phase 3 is going to help continue the reduction of arterial plaque through proper timing and portions of carbohydrates and fats. It's so interesting to me how often people come to this conclusion that because they're introducing carbs, they're A, going to stall in their weight loss, B, going to start bloating more, C, they're going to stop any forward progress they've made in reducing their LDL cholesterol or their high triglycerides or their A1C. And this is simply not true. There is no black and white of nutritional protocol to fixing and healing and helping our bodies to function regularly. A bigger conversation is more about what is our caloric intake. Calories really do matter because they are what dictate whether we're maintaining, losing, or gaining weight. But they're not the end of the conversation. How we feel those calories not only will dictate the way that our bodies handle these incoming chemicals, that's all food is chemicals, but how they will impact our brains, our energy, our emotions, our satiety, and so forth. So as you know, these are two very important conversations and pieces to make sure that are all a part of this conversation. As you are aware of PVC versus PVF, I want to go through a few things. Number one, PVC meals, protein, veggie, carb, are really great for when you need some energy, when you feel like you need to get your bowels moving, when you're just trying to kind of prime your day. But a PVF meal is going to be best when you're trying to have more satiety, you want a little bit less volatility in your blood sugar, you're going for a little more of a sustainable meal rather than a high energy meal. I personally function far better off PVF meals when I am not in a pregnant state right now. Right now I function, all of my meals are PVFC. For sure, they have every nutrient. So that's the third thing I want to talk about. Please do not have a fear of combining carbs and fats. The dosage makes the poison. I wish I could attribute that to one person who has said that, but so many people use that phrase that now it's just kind of a phrase. The one I heard it from most though is Lane Norton. When you are combining carbs and fats, let's make sure the portion of carbohydrates is not so abundant that we're going to be oxidizing a ton of fat. So keeping to our standard peak ranges and portion sizes is very helpful. Peak ranges, as a reminder, are those that help qualify what a basic portion size is. Now, that may not mean, let's say you're a big 260-pound man, that you should only be eating one portion. But it gives us a standard portion size that allows me to talk to a great number of people and standardize what portion is or looks like. So a portion of fat is 8 to 12 grams. That's about 2 tablespoons of nuts. Now, I may assign a man to eat 3 portions, so that's FFF, and that's for his body, the right portion. But again, it comes back to I have a standardized portion size amount that I can use for males, for females, for all types of bodies. So those standard portion amounts, protein is 15 to 30 grams of protein. It's about 3 to 5 ounces of meat. It's about half to 3/4 of a cup of cottage cheese or plain Greek yogurt. It's anywhere from 2 to 3 full eggs. Of course, you're getting some fat in that. I'm not going to go too much into specifics, but I just want you to understand peak ranges, or maybe this is a good refresher for many of you. The vegetables, yes, they have carbohydrates. And yes, if you're tracking macros, those carbs matter. But when we are not tracking macros in an app and we are simply doing PFL approach to thinking through our meals, basically a tier 2 of putting our meals together and constructing them in that way, then just think 1 to 2 cups, 1 to 2 kind of little handfuls of vegetables. There's no real right or wrong there, because if we are not stepping into a tier 3 where we are measuring every macro and calorie, then we really should just be adding more color and looking for more energy and choosing to eat in a tier 2, which is that approach. A carbohydrate is 20 to 30 grams. That's a portion. That's about a 3 to 4 ounce serving of sweet potato or red potato. That's about a half to a full cup of fruit, depends on the fruit. It's about a half cup of oats or beans or rice. It's usually 1 to 1.5 slices of bread or a tortilla, depending on, there's many different tortillas, but as you start flipping over your labels, you can just start to get an awareness. For instance, I made chicken tacos the other night, so just out of curiosity, I'd flipped over the label, and for 3 of the little street tacos, there were 18 grams of carbs. And so while it wasn't, the most ideal carbohydrate, I wouldn't call it a POcarb, it still was pretty much in my range of 20 to 30 grams of carbs. So I had 3 little chicken street tacos with vegetables, and that was a PVC meal. It was great. In this phase, we're also continuing to develop the habit of building neurotransmitter production in a positive manner through proper pairing of vegetables and protein. Protein breaks down to amino acids. Those amino acids bind with cofactors, with minerals and vitamins from vegetables to make neurotransmitters. Those are the little the hormone chemicals that transfer messages in the brain and help produce feelings of wellness, happiness, abundance, feelings of contentment, excitement, hope, many of the things that we don't notice we're blessed with until they're gone, and we feel so in a slump and our mental health begins to slide. Now, are there many reasons that our mental health can begin to dissipate and to feel like it's not at its normal function? Absolutely. But let's do what we can on the nutrition level to provide our body with those key components and building blocks so that we're not just trying to wish our way there or therapize our way there, but we actually have the chemicals. That's really so important that we look at it that way, because our bodies are a physical thing, and the emotions, while absolutely I do believe they play a great role in our body and function of the structure, it is first and foremost our responsibility to build up the structure of the physiology with the knowledge we have. In phase 3, we're going to be reducing inflammation by continuing to eliminate or bring in small amounts that refined sugar and hydrogenated fats, which is mostly found in those processed foods. We will slowly be introducing gluten or dairy to assess the efficacy of eliminating or adding this back in with those carbohydrate choices or protein choices. Again, sticking to peak ranges, those portion sizes. We're bringing in small portions of fruit to build the antioxidant load and to start the habit of detoxing your body on a daily basis. So many people think a detox is all about, like doing some cleanse. Well, the fact is, when you start eating right and you start training these habits and you allow the most incredible organ in your body, which is your liver, to detoxify your body on a daily basis. Every 6 minutes, your liver is cleansing the blood. As you bring in antioxidants daily through your nutrition choices, that aids this process. And all of these things are like little puzzle pieces that combine together to make the full picture. Let's be careful not to isolate one puzzle piece, one principle, and say that's the magic ticket, that's the power, that's what everyone should be doing. It's got to be the complete picture, and that's why we work to change habits and to introduce these new ways of nutrition behavior. We'll continue the POcarbs to start colonizing good gut bacteria, particularly if you did phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, due to any kind of autoimmune condition or any symptom in, maybe you've been diagnosed with an illness and maybe you're dealing with pain, maybe you're dealing with some symptom that you can't put your finger on. All of these have been shown that they most likely and more often than not will trace back to gut health and the microbiome. And so this process of going through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 absolutely helps with that. This will allow you more mental practice control of moderately bringing in carbs and controlling those portions and timing. It is my responsibility to give you a bridge between what you've been doing with phase 1 and phase 2 and your real life and your lifestyle change. And that bridge is learning how to respect carbohydrates in general, not as a diet, not as part of a phase, but as part of just what you do. And does it take time? Does it take practice? Does it take coming back again and again and wiping off your knees when you fall down and have a bad weekend, or you had a party and you just didn't even think about it, or you had a difficult emotional time, or you went through a pregnancy, or whatever it be, and perhaps the principles slid a little bit. That's okay. That's fine. The Power Foods lifestyle is a lifestyle because it gives us the tools to live it broadly or to tighten up and to reach our goals in that way as well. Something important on the physiological level that I find about phase 3 when we're bringing in carbs for females, about 100 to 150 grams of carbs per day, usually in 2 to 3 meals. So those are kept to that 20 to 30 gram carb of range. And of course, there's room for residuals with those vegetables. Something I really like is that this helps maintain lower insulin levels, and it helps regulate blood sugar through practicing that portioning, pairing, and timing. When you combine a POcarb with a protein, it helps that blood sugar not pull up as much. Now, I want to avoid using the word spike. I think that word is thrown around way too much. A spiked insulin is really something that definitively jumps from that blood sugar level of like 80 to 100. If you were pricking your finger and testing your blood, that's a pretty good baseline to be at, and you were to jump above 130, within like a 5 to 10 minute period, that would be a spike. Now, when we're eating POcarbs, because of their fiber, if we're pairing it with a protein and vegetables, we're going to usually see more of a gradual increase of blood sugar. And so an increase of blood sugar is not the same as a spike. Spikes are not something we want to experience unless it is post-workout and we are more on the athlete level side of things. We are training aggressively, we are doing intervals, we're in that anaerobic, that state of being with your heart, because it is shown in the science that your glucose uptake is increased like for an hour to 2 hours after the workout. So a spike for you could actually be beneficial. Someone who's trying to pack on muscle, a spike with the proper meal following it could pull that in and help build and repair muscle better than anything else without it impacting their health in a negative way. So there's so much nuance to it. It depends on the type of workouts you're doing, the timing, where your health is currently at. But again, I just really want each of you to make sure that you are not closing doors in your mind to anything and coming away from nutrition thinking there are yes, no, black, white statements, because very, very rarely are there yes, no, black, white statements. It really is an it depends answer. And we have to look at all of the different nuance of your life to determine if something is effective versus harmful. I do like that we're teaching the cells in your body to become more glucose responsive because of the slow introduction of carbs, that we didn't suddenly go from keto to a who cares, I'm going to eat whatever carb comes across my path, because that's when you're going to gain all the weight. That's when your cells are going to just backfire and you could actually land in worse health than you started out. So be very prudent, be methodical, be patient. Remember that nutrition and these types of approaches are more about learning how to temper our mind and to keep in control and to look at emotional triggers, to plan, to prioritize, to keep some of these very important lifestyle characteristics at the forefront, because that's when we are able to make these things happen. Now, if we start to tailspin out of control and we're losing that control, do something fast. And what I mean is get on the phone with me or with somebody else that you trust and start addressing what emotions or mindsets have led you into this lack of control around carbohydrates. I can guarantee it's one of 5 triggers. It's going to be either fatigue, it's going to be resentment, or I need to forgive someone or yourself. So something happened in your life to kind of send you careening out of control. It's going to be loneliness, feeling maybe there was a loss of a relationship, maybe your kids just left, maybe your kids are suddenly all in school, maybe you've lost someone recently to death or even to illness. It's going to be mental health and feeling shame or depression or feelings of anxiety, a lot of these things that many people deal with on a daily basis, and not having tools of how to manage those yet. That's a very important part of the mental health journey, is developing the tools to pull out and use in the right time. And the fifth one I'll leave empty because everything else I didn't say would fall in that fifth category. Those are the reasons that we tend to tailspin out of control. It's not for lack of knowledge most of the time. When that happens, that's when you find yourself saying, I should be doing better, I should be doing this. And as many of my clients know, I call the should a naughty word. It is not allowed in our vocabulary. And the reason is because we need to simply own. We need to own where we are at. And with vigor, whether that's we're choosing to go and eat the entire bag of hot tamales, or whether we are choosing to put them down the garbage chute. And do people have garbage chutes? And instead find, some fruit to munch on. Whatever your choice is, you own it, but you don't live in this area of shame that follows immediately whenever we say, I should do this. So I want you to be very aware of that. If you do decide on your indulgence meals to bring in non-strategic carbs, then please make sure you're sticking to the portion size, which is 20 to 30 grams of carbs. Now that's really not a lot. That's basically a cookie the size of your palm. That's maybe a palm full of candy. Turn over your labels, or look on nutritionfacts.com, whatever you need to do to figure out what the approximate carbohydrate serving is for that non-strategic food. Maybe you are going to a restaurant and you want some tres leches. Did I say that right? I'm just learning what that food is because of my husband. And I personally don't really enjoy it. It makes me sick because I don't often do dairy. But anyhow, being able to look at any indulgent food and use the palm of your hand to say that's going to be about 20 to 30 grams of carbs. So it really requires you to nail down your portions. In phase 3, I do not want you to have an entire indulgence meal. I would like you to introduce non-strategic carbs strategically, which is pairing them with a protein and a vegetable, and then enjoying that smaller portion of those carbohydrates. Again, if you don't feel you can do that, then phase 3 is not the time to be doing those non-strategic carbs. You need to finish those 4 weeks, and then I hope that you have developed the mindset and the habits and the persistence to then start introducing them very wisely and methodically and not going crazy. That's really, we want to avoid that. That's where we're trying to train that out of ourselves. We want to develop mindsets and emotions of temperance, and that would be really good for us. Now, as we conclude all of these phase education pieces together, I want to remind you of a few very important elements that will make or break your success in this journey. I also want to encourage you to make the process so much easier on yourself by using the meal plans and grocery lists that many of you already have, or again, you can grab those from me at powerfoodlifestyle@gmail.com. In the process of working to improve your body's health, you must be gentle with yourself. We all have different personality types, and your way of motivating yourself may be more prone to becoming angry or demeaning if you don't follow through fully. Now, it's very rare that I've observed a positive outcome in someone's life who uses negative emotion and even self-manipulation to get themselves to follow through. This type of behavior causes more emotional damage that then diminishes one's trust in themselves to the point where having hope and faith in the future attempts is corroded. It's corroded gradually, but it does so until there's no self-trust left at all. And that's a really difficult space to live in. So gentle toughness is a much more preferred way of being during this journey, and that may be a journey in and of itself. This means that if you get off track, you acknowledge it, you amend your ways, and you begin again, or where you left off with firmness. But don't berate yourself or allow negative self-talk about being unable to be perfect in this process. One way to stay motivated is to focus on your outcomes. This can only happen when you ask your mind to have hope in a future that is different from the present state of symptoms you're currently experiencing. One of the best visual practices you can do is pulling out your journal and answering questions about how the end of the journey will look. What will your body feel like? How will your digestion work more efficiently? What will your daily brain function feel like? How will you feel when you look in the mirror at your body? What will your confidence and trust in yourself feel like? How will your family react to you putting your health as a priority? How will this journey impact your career or the way you spend your time? it can definitely be worth taking 15 minutes to sit in quiet pondering on these questions before journaling your responses. Visualization of your future is the first step in the process of creation. You must see it to the point you can feel what it will be like. You have to have that hope that it's possible. It is. It really is. I assure you, your future is possible. Your body and spirit, when combined with the power of nutrition, mindset, and emotional healing, can achieve so much more than you have any idea. How blessed we are to live at a time when so much knowledge is readily available to us. All we have to do is believe, then follow the process. Remember to focus on your individual, unique journey. Don't compare your journey to anyone else's. This may mean unfollowing nearly every account on Instagram or Facebook that you have, and that is a very often used tool of mine with my clients to get them to focus, and I use it myself. Doesn't mean that you don't like someone. Doesn't mean that they don't have great content. Sometimes we're not in a place to be following people. Sometimes we compare ourselves, we make assumptions, and we judge ourselves. And if that's happening, click the unfollow button. Clean up the billboard programming that you're allowing yourself to see every day. And let's get back to the basics of focusing on you and building your journey. I know you can take your own health into your control. You have the power, and you will have more power as you do your part, as well as ask for God's enabling power to be bestowed upon you in prayer every single day. After all, He is the source of all power, and that is where we get our personal power. I just barely published my next book on Amazon called The Power of Identity. I co-wrote this with my mother, Patrice Barton Hunt, and it is a big collection. I share a lot of coaching stories of how I've worked with individuals who came to me seeking help with their nutrition and fitness, but perhaps what was deeper, and the spiritual and the mindset aspects of our body and our health. So I invite you, if that is even of remote interest to you, to go and grab a copy. It's 100 pages, and it is a very easy read. It's a very introspective read. You may find yourself stopping to work on some of the exercises that I provide, and know that all proceeds from that book are being donated to Latter-day Saint Charities, which is a humanitarian aid group. I am excited for you to step into this next stage of becoming your best self. Now, a quick reminder before I go, if you're not already, go follow Power Foods Lifestyle on Instagram to get helpful reminders, motivation, and education as you move throughout your week. Turn notifications on so you never miss a post. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave me a review on iTunes. That really is the best platform to leave reviews on, as that's where the rankings happen, and it is so helpful for me keeping the show going to get those rankings. Thank you again to all the Power Foods Lifestyle supporters on Patreon. Definitely encourage you to consider if that's something that you're able to do at this time. Monthly donations start at only $5 a month. As always, make the choice to power your body one meal, one workout, and one day at a time. And one last final reminder. The information in this episode is provided for informational purposes and is not meant to substitute the advice provided by your own physician or medical professional.